Well, I kind of like DX Watch because I like to roll over it and see what the country is, and it shows the sunrise and sunset and all that stuff. I do wish it would actually look it up on QRZ's webpage. It looks it up using QRZ's database, but it's on their website, and then you can't use QRZ's logbook easily.
Yeah, I just copy them whenever I work them. I just copy them out of the cluster and then go. I listen to them. If I can hear them, I copy them. Right off the page. I copy their call sign, then I work them, plug them in, and go on.
Yeah, that's what I have to do. I think DX Summit does a cool thing though, where it'll show you what the likelihood of your being able to talk to them is. If I recall, if you'll right click or mouse over it or something.
So it's taking into consideration your QTH?
Yeah, it takes your QTH sunspot info, AK index, and, it's like a vocab type calculation. I think that's on DX Summit. Let me double check if that's where I saw it.
Nope, that's the other one. It's on here. If it is, I sure didn't find it.
And they're making this calculation of you being able to talk to the other entity at what kind of power level?
You may be able to set it in there. Yeah, if you click right on the DX column, you'll see the DX call sign. So click on one, but you'll probably have to be logged in though, and then say show vocap predictions. And it'll tell you have to set your location, which you can actually plug in right there on the right side. You can plug in your lat long, and then it will show you that the calculation, like kind of the likelihood that you're going to be able to talk to them right now.
And it takes into consideration your operating power, or you crank that in, right?
I don't recall how that one works. I haven't used it a ton, to be honest. It may not take into account the power, but the power doesn't play a humongous role in it. It does play some, but when you do those calculations, it's not a humongous difference.
Roger. They'd probably look at that at like 100 watts or so, and then if you have more, you would just have a better shot at it.
That'd be my guess. I'll try it here.
Yeah, I'm plugging it in to play with it.
And just to reiterate, the internet locations are DX Summit and DX Watch.
Right. Yeah, those are the ones that I use, at least. And it's kind of cool just to leave them open, because if you just happen to be near the radio, you see, oh, look, there's some country I've never worked. And then you can go see if you can hear them, and if you can hear them, then you can try to work them.
Do you get any indication of how active that particular entity is as far as other people trying to contact them? Like, is there a big pile-up or something like that?
Absolutely, yeah. If a lot of people are contacting them, then they'll get spotted over and over. Now, of course, that's relying on people to spot them, and it's entirely possible that people will work them without spotting them, either because they don't use the spotting cluster, or because they don't feel like doing it for whatever reason.
Or the last 49 people's already spotted him.
So does that cluster anomaly or the cluster readout, is that in numbers, or is that something you would see on the screen?
Not sure I understand what you mean by the cluster readout. You can see the frequency, the calling station, that is the station that spotted the person, and then the DX station and the time, and people will fill in some info. and then if you want those predictions, and you plug in your location, which, by the way, it looks like you type in a grid square, and then click on it and say show vocab prediction, it shows you times versus likelihood of being able to make the contact in this kind of weird radial chart, and it highlights the current time, it looks like.
Roger, I was just thinking about the pile-up observation. Does that show as a number of people trying to contact the entity, or does it show up as something about being able to see those multiple transmissions on the screen?
I haven't seen one that shows you that. That would be a cool feature if it would count the number of spots, say, within the past hour or something, and then, maybe change the color of it to make it red for like, oh, it's on fire, there's lots of people trying to get to them, or something like that. The way I judge it is just by the number of spots, but that isn't always a good judge. Sometimes you just gotta look and, go there and have yourself a listen.
Roger, roger. Interesting features on the internet.
Put them there on the cluster if it's if it's something somebody else might be interested in, because I think it's just polite for other people. And as soon as you put it on there, that person starts getting a lot more traffic. That's for sure, because I've heard it happen.
There's a lot of stuff on the internet that helps the amateur radio operator kind of cipher through his what he's interested in,
Yeah, it's pretty amazing nowadays, the stuff that is available, and it certainly makes sense. I think for contesting, the use of spotting sites puts you into a different category from people who don't use spotting sites. They typically separate those because people who use the sites obviously have an unfair advantage over people who aren't using them.
Roger. A lot of contacts that I've made overseas, they're using my first name on the second transmission. So they're heavily into the internet.
Yeah, that's about what I find too. Most people look each other up. I try not to use somebody's name until they give it to me, but sometimes I do if I'm trying to confirm. If I'm trying to copy their call sign, I'm like, oh, is that Steve? So yeah, but it's great technology that there is that database available.
Roger, but it gets down to the point that the guy that's really contesting, all he's got time for is his call sign. He expects all his location and all that other stuff for people to, look up on QRZ, I guess.
NAGJ590, that's CQ.
Exactly.
Go ahead, CQ.
Oh, that was Blaine making fun of contesting.
I heard somebody calling CQ on 2 meters the other day.
Good.
I started to say something and I said, no, they'll figure it out.
Sometimes I'll say CQ on simplex, just because I want to keep talking so that somebody might happen to hear me.
I call CQ on 2 meter sideband every time I get on there, and on simplex. I always do.
Oh, Roger, but I was talking about on repeater.
Oh, well, that's a little different.
Yeah, on the repeater, I don't say CQ. I think I learned that when I was new. When I first got on, I think I was, and they said, no, usually on the repeater you don't say that.
About the second 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, ham radio has all this etiquette, or it did have. It's lost a lot of it in the last few years, but it used to be, when I came in here, it was extremely etiquette driven. I did not speak on this frequency that I'm talking on to you tonight for the first 6 or 8 months that I sat here and listened every night. When I had a valid call sign, I just didn't open my mouth. I mean, if you did, you got chastised clear off the air by the old geezers.
Well, you know, the thing I've observed is that the old geezers are now hanging out on the extra class license frequencies, you know, and all of that talent is being taken away from the general frequencies that they could be so inspirational to the new amateur coming up.
That is actually a very good point. I've certainly gone down there, but they've always been very receptive. You know, when you talk to them, they haven't run me away or anything like that. But I think the etiquette isn't an important part of the hobby, you know, to some degree. But I don't think that etiquette is not talking to people. I think etiquette is talking to every single station that comes in, and at the very least, making a contact with them and sending them on their way, you know.
Well, I mean, the way I was taught is you're always supposed to take those new guys and try to mold them as best you can into what it's supposed to be, you know, teach them how to, you know, speak on the radio instead of hollering CQ on a repeater, for instance, or, you know, or the whole bunch of other things that are out there. I mean, some things like QSL and those kind of things were very much used when I first came into the hobby. They've died in a lot of ways, but they are still very valid in the DX arena. You know, but for rag chewing, they're not. I mean, you're almost laughed at for saying QSL in a rag chew session now. So, you know, or QSYing, or, you know, whatever you're doing, or QRM, or, you know, all the common ones. You know, you don't hear much in the rag chew world, but you do still hear quite a bit on the DX guys. So it's not so much, you know, whether you do it or not, it's where you do it or you don't.
Absolutely, and you've tried hard to mold people into you know, being decent operators, and wow, look how I turned out. Don't ever do that again, Steve.
Yeah, I'm a real piece of work.
Well, you come in here in pretty fair shape. You've done all right, Joe. I don't see anything really that you've done that's annoying. Ho-ho.
Well, good Steve did to me, Joe. I'm a real piece of work.
Yeah, I know. What
on the other hand,
no, I certainly appreciate it. I mean, I've learned tons from you, Steve, and Gary, and Tom, and pretty much everybody in here. Blaine, even Blaine. No, I mean, seriously, I've learned absolutely a ton over the past year, and, you know, I appreciate the effort.
Okay, tell me what I'm doing wrong. In 480 what?
I learned tons from Andy, too. Hey,
Andy.
Andy.
Riding right along like you're supposed to, Andy. You're doing fine.
Hello, Andy. Thanks.
Well, it's like, you know, extra class license gives you the privilege to operate on other frequencies. It's just that when you do that, then you negate your responsibility to transcend into the other frequencies, general frequencies, to help you know, the guy coming along. And not only that, but just the inspiration of some of those guys and some of the stories they tell, you know, are just would be so uplifting if you know, some generals could hear that kind of stuff.
Well, all you got to do is scroll down there and listen to them. I mean, that's the unfortunate side of not being an extra is, you know, you can go down and listen to the old guys that want to hang out down below and not really associate up here per se, or whatever you want to call it. But, you know, you can still listen, but you can't ask questions, and that's the sucky part of it.
Well, I met a guy who was very inspirational up on 40 one night. I was still a general, and I completely accidentally transmitted in the extra part where he was hanging out. And he was very, very polite about it. He says, oh, you know what, you're not supposed to talk here. Let's QSY up to such and such a frequency. And, you know, when I got back up, you know, I told him I'd made a mistake, and he goes, oh, don't worry about it. It happens all the time. And, you know, I had some great chats with him about antennas and stuff. I think his call was Into Golf. He's out in Arizona. I hear him all the time on 40. I think that's the call.
Yeah, it is embarrassing to find that you're suddenly out of band.
I think I've only done it it twice. That was
you know, I mean, in all seriousness, when any one of us became a general, it's a little overwhelming when you first climb into the radio and get on the air and start roaming around talking to people and trying to figure out where the hell you're supposed to be and where the hell you're not supposed to be, you know. I mean, it's not hard, the first few months especially, to end up somewhere that you shouldn't be. And then, you know, I worked a contest one weekend, and I forget how many DX stations, and every damn one of them was in the extra portion. I had a list of like 20 of them, you know, in my logbook, and I was a general. I was like, oh crap, they're going to come take me away.
Now the real question, Steve, is did you leave them in your call book?
I did. I had, you know, it was my mistake, and I realized my mistake, but, you know, nobody called me out on it. Nobody ever sent me a nastygram, nothing. But I did leave them because I figured, you know what, I did it. It's in their logbook. They've you know, I know they've logged me because it's a contest. So there's no reason to, you know, to take them out at this point, because the call sign police are going to come get me, you know, because they're going to go through their logbook to give them credit and find me in there, and then they're going to come haul me away to, you know, to radio jail.
Roger, but you should put a little pity comment in your logbook, you know, realized out of band, sorry.
Yeah, in the info section or the note section. I guess I could have done that, but I don't even know if I could find them now. I guess there's a way to sort this thing or search it back over time. I know it finds, when I talk to people multiple times, it finds them in there somewhere.
Yeah, Roger. It can be terribly embarrassing. I had one. I keep a chart, frequency chart, band plan, I guess, and I had made an incorrect notation on the lower side of 40 meters, which I was down 7165, 7160, you know, and got up at 7175, and you know, I don't know what I was thinking, but I just had this notation that I could go down to there, and I was then advised that it should be 7175, and I looked at it, and you know, I suddenly realized I was had to get out of there.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing you can always do if you end up in that boat is just, you know, if you're speaking with someone, say, oops, I'm out of band, I need to go where I belong, you know, I'm not supposed to be here. Thank you, and I got to go, and give your call on QSY, you know, or the other side of that is you realize that when you're not actually talking, then you just spin the knob quickly.
Yeah, Roger. Yeah, I did the first. I apologized and vamoosed.
One reason I got my extra tickets because I wasn't smart enough to remember where I wasn't supposed to be.
K0OKS 40 after.
Well, now, I used to always carry a band plan in my vehicle. I had a laminated front and back sheet that had everything on it that I made, that just had the band and where I could go, you know, from here to here. It just had the numbers from here to here, from here to here, from here to here, because all I was working in the mobile was phone, so all I had to worry about was the phone side of things. So I just made one, made everything different colors, and laminated it, and left it in there by the console, and that worked great. And then once I upgraded, I didn't have to worry about it, but it's still in my vehicle.
KC9VKV. I've got the same thing. It shows the lower side, upper side, and then I've got the one that's in the middle, that's dead in the middle of the band. So I've got three frequency notations: bottom end, middle, and the top end. And I use that middle to know what, you know, where to set up, because I usually try to set up in the middle of the band so I can go either way.
Yeah, good plan. I keep band plan right next to me. I still look at it these days. You know, I just want to make sure I'm not going into the CW portion or something, especially on the bands that don't use much. You know, 10 and And 17 and 15, I usually only use those for DX.
And I stay away from bands like 30.
Yeah, well, 30's so tiny, 100, what is it, 100 to 150, that's it.
Yeah, and you got specific frequencies you got to be at, so too complicated for me, man. I need some roaming space.
Yeah, 60 meters is the one I can never remember, and I mean, I know 33, I know 53330.5, and I know 5403, and there's another one, the 74 one, I think it is. I remember those, but I can't remember the other ones. But this Anon's at least smart enough. They're all marked. They all come up with a little blurb over top of them, so I know where they're all at, and it actually says on the screen, channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, 160.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, because you got to use the channels and can't use over 100 watts and yada yada.
Yeah, well, and you have to be 0.5. You got to be to center. You got to be 500s above.
And then there's some restriction on antennas.
On 60, was there? I don't recall. I mean, because it's 100 watts ERP. So yes, there is. So your effective radio power has to be 100 watts or less. So if you have a lot of gain, that's probably no good.
Right. Basically, if you run 100 watts in a dipole, you're okay. Other than that, if you got some high gain antenna, then you could screw up, but that'd be about it.
And who are we protecting with using that band that way?
The thing has pretty reasonable gain towards the east, which is good for DX as well. But it may have as much as 8 to 10 dB of gain, depending on the modeling.
And who are we protecting operating that band that way?
There's one big agency that uses 60 meters that we would mess with or could mess with, and the military. Military operates in there. There's actually a lot of military CW in between those channels that I see on the scope all the time since I'm running SDR. There's always CW there, high-speed CW, the militaries, or some digital mode of some sort. But anytime they do interoperability type stuff anymore for FEMA, like for disaster relief kind of stuff, 60 meters is utilized to link between the government entity, which is normally FEMA, and the amateur world.
Roger. So we're protecting non-amateur transmissions.
Right. We're protecting government, federal transmissions in that space. That's what we're up close to.
Roger. Too complicated for me. Give me 75.
Well, the cool thing about 60 is, even with 100 watts, 60 has characteristics of 40 for the daytime, but it has characteristics of 75 at night. So it's a sweet band because it's right in the middle, and it does both. It works great in the day. It works great at night.
Roger. So one of those universal time channels.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons the federal government hangs out there, obviously, with their crap, is because it's good night and day. That's why they took the best and gave us the leftovers. But anyhow, they're sharing a little bit of leftovers with us there. And the nice thing is, when it really counts, they're they want to interact with us there because that's where everybody can talk. And of course, anytime there's some sort of reason to facilitate it, you can use the maximum amount of power necessary for reasonable communications if it's an emergency type situation. And if it's a declared state of emergency, which is what it is when FEMA's out, then you can run all the damn power you want or need to.
Roger, just curious that the Puerto Rican thing, when they were passing messages back and forth to, to the U.S., they were up on like 14, 280, 270, 260, as opposed to in those, like the 30-meter band or 60-meter band or whatever.
there's good reason for that. The traffic they passed on 20 meters was not necessity traffic. It was health and welfare type warm and fuzzy traffic, as I would call it. It was traffic that, hey, Johnny's family's okay. Tell Johnny's family here they're okay. It was that kind of traffic, which is not a necessity. That's just a good amateur practice for health and welfare, and that's basically what they were doing on 20 meters.
Roger, but you know for a fact that they were using the other, 30 and 60 for the more, what would you call that, the more urgent traffic?
Well, I don't know for a fact that they were using 60. I would gamble to say they probably were. I didn't really go up and monitor it. I probably should have to see, but I know they used 40 and I know they used 20, but it was more for the warm, fuzzy health and welfare kind of stuff than it was logistics, I'm sure the logistics was handled by the military stuff, which that's usually 4 megs or, 6 something. It's below 40 meters. There's 2 in there. There's the below, let's see, how do you say this? There's the above 75 and below 40 deal, but it's not 60. It's the other stuff in between that the military uses.
I know the Red Cross and the Salvation Army were using text messaging. I can't remember the name of what exactly it was, but they were using that for like the death notices and whatnot.
And do you know what band?
20 meters is where it was going on, but I'm not sure the texting was done on 20 meters, but that's where the voice was.
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of different digital modes out there, and people like Mars, the military amateur radio service guys, they have a new digital protocol that only the members can get access to that particular software that they're passing military type health and welfare traffic with these days. So a lot of their stuff's going away from voice and going more toward digital. There's a lot of that kind of stuff going on too, where the digital thing is nice because they can plug it in where it goes between point A and point B, which gets around amateur type stuff because everybody can't hear it, but which normally ham stuff's all frowned upon if it's a station to station type interaction rather than a across the board type action. And some of this new digital stuff's getting away from that, where it's more just a point to point interaction, which kind of gets away from the ham stuff. But what are you going to do when the government's the one force feeding you in it?
I think the Salvation Army was up on 14.260, I think it was.
W8OO, 2 minutes late.
MC40, John.
KC9VKV. What was that, 2 minutes to 8?
November 8th, Zulu Juliet.
2 minutes late.
Oh, I was going to say, what time frame are you on, Steve?
He's in China.
I was saying, now where in the world would it be 2 minutes till 8?
2 minutes late. You don't understand Hickphonics, I see.
Ebonics.
My hillbilly voice gets me in trouble all the time.
Are you the bomb? You the bomb.
We're going to jump out of here, man. Try to get some sleep. We'll say threes to everybody. You guys carry on.
Have a good night, Jim.
Roger, roger. Threes. KC9VKV, be clear.
Sorry, Jim.
7:30, Jim. You have a very comforting radio voice.
73, Jim. You have a good night, man. Kenny, DJ.